With the recent performance of the 2024 Philadelphia Phillies, no one would claim to be a Philly killer. But in 1964, when the Cardinals were battling the Phillies for the National League pennant, a young farmer from Georgia stood in the Phillies' way. Welcome to St. Louis Cardinals Beyond the HOF, saluting unsung heroes, with your hosts, Tom Nance
and John Crost.
And here we go with episode 5 of St. Louis Cardinals Beyond the Hall of Fame, and we'll be saluting another unsung hero. This episode is being recorded on July 1st, 2024. Let me say hello to my co-host, John Crost. How you doing, John?
Doing great, Tom. And by the way, happy Bobby Bonilla Day.
Happy Bobby Bonilla Day. You got to clue me in on that, John.
Oh, sure. So what it was, Bobby Bonilla, when he was with the Mets, got his contract restructured with them because apparently the owner of the Mets wanted to invest the money with Bernie Madoff, of all people. And yeah, we saw how well that worked out for him.
Yeah.
And so they were going to pay him $1.19 million a year, every year through the year 2035.
Oh, they did that. Why? Because they couldn't give him the lump sum up front, or what?
Right. Yeah, they didn't want to pay him, I forgot how much it was for initially, but so they wanted to do that, and so they just restructured his contract to be like years and years longer.
Holy cow! So why is today the Happy Bobby Bonilla Day?
Because he gets paid that amount of money every year through the year 2035. So July 1st, 2035, when he'll be 72, will be his last paycheck from the Mets. Oh. Even though he hasn't played since 2001 at all. And that season, he was with the Cardinals.
Oh, there's our Cardinal tie-in.
Yeah.
Happy Bobby Bonilla. How did he do for the Cardinals in 2001?
Oh, let's just say his play allowed Pujols to be called up early, and the rest is history.
All right. His quick exit led to a quick entrance by Mr. Pujols. Very nice. Well, enjoy that $1+ million, Mr. Bonilla.
I'm sure he is, man. I would love that kind of retirement plan.
Happy retirement. Well, there's another person we're going to spotlight today who is also retired. And let me start with this question here. John, what would most people say if I asked them, who's the most famous peanut farmer from Georgia?
Oh, easily, Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, everybody would probably come up with that as a trivia question. But if you're a Cardinal fan who listens to our podcast, you might have another answer about a famous peanut farmer from Georgia. And who's that going to be?
Oh, a guy named Gordon Richardson, or you call Gordie Richardson.
Yeah.
As he was better known by.
Indeed, and he's another unsung hero that we're going to sing about right here. And I will say that we've been spotlighting, this is our 5th Cardinal that we spotlighted from the 1964 season that played critical roles in wins either during the regular season and or in the World Series. And if you're listening, you might say, well, what's the big deal? They had some critical moments here and there with a handful of games, but I want you again, John, just to review how close the 64 pennant race was, and that's why their contributions are so critical. So what was going on in the 1964 pennant race?
Okay, so the 64 pennant race, which was really initially mostly between the Phillies, the Reds, and the Giants, and the Cardinals were like way back, like 10, 11 games come the All-Star break. And then, that's when the Cardinals made the big surge. And by the end of September, the Cards and the Reds each had 3 games left. The Phillies had 2. The Cards were in first place at this point. And the Giants had 4 games left. The Giants were like 3.5 games out, but they could still mathematically tie.
Right.
For first place. It could have been, there was like different scenarios of 2, 3, and even a 4-way tie between the Cards, the Reds, Phillies, and Giants.
Right. And this was
And they had like the playoff scenario was just like, I'm sure the National League and MLB was like, oh gosh, please, no, please don't.
yeah, right. And this was before there was an East and West division. So for a
Yeah.
team to become a pennant, to earn the pennant flag, they had to beat everybody, not just the 6 or 5 teams in your division. You had to beat everybody.
Exactly. There's no wild card or anything like that.
And what were the final standings at the end of the regular season?
So the Cards ended up finishing first with 93 and 69 record. Then it was the Reds and the Phillies. They ended up at with they ended up with 92 wins each at 70 losses.
Wow.
And then the Giants were like at 88 wins, I believe it was.
So what a finish. The Cardinals win by 1 game over 2 other teams. So
right. And like by 3 or 4 over the Giants. It's just like, but it was down to the last games.
Yeah. Last day of the
end
season.
of the season itself.
The pennant was in jeopardy right up to the very last game played, which again underscores the point that the contributions that Gordie and Barney and Roger Craig and Ron Taylor have made when they were critical in those relatively handful of games, those were huge. If they didn't perform in those 5 or 6 critical games that we've, for the most part, outlined in each of our episodes, Cardinals don't win, or they go in the least worst case scenario. They go into a tie, then who knows what would have happened.
Yeah, and as we'll go into, Gordie's, his critical games got magnified, as you're going to explain later on in the story.
That's right. And he's an interesting pitcher from the standpoint. I'm going to share just a couple of sentences from our spotlight, and they are that he wasn't blessed with an overpowering fastball. So instead he used control with good breaking balls and a top-flight changeup. He had to hit his spots or he'd be in trouble in short order. Gordie said, baseball is a cat and mouse game. You have to outsmart the hitter. When I read that, it reminded me of Kyle Hendrickson, a current Cub player who has just been a Cardinal killer. He frustrates the heck out of me. Now, he's no longer the top-flight pitcher that he was just a few years ago. I think he's been relegated to the bullpen. But just recently, in the last Cub-Cardinal series, Hendrickson comes out of the bullpen because there was an injury to the starter. Something happened. He came in and threw 5 maybe innings of shut-down ball to the Cardinals. It's like, Hendrickson! And he doesn't throw hard, but golly gee whiz, he does play a cat and mouse game, and he does outsmart the Cardinals routinely with his slow breaking balls and slow fastballs. So why can't we hit this guy?
Yeah, it's like, exactly. It's just, he's like sort of like a Steve Carlton, how he used to always frustrate us.
Yeah.
When we went to the Phillies. But Carlton was blessed with a fantastic fastball.
Right.
Hendrickson doesn't have that blessing.
No, and neither did Gordie, neither did John Tudor. When I shared my frustration of Hendrickson with one of my Cub fan friends, he goes, well, now you know how I felt about John Tudor. Why couldn't we hit John Tudor? He was just laying him up there, and the Cubs were swinging and missing. So it's interesting how these pitchers who are not having that dominating fastball or even a tremendous breaking ball, but being able to hit their spots and throw their different pitches in the right spots can be very successful.
That's true. That's true. If you know where the batter is weakest in his swing and you can hit that spot within like an inch or two, you're going to beat that batter.
Indeed. Written by John Crost, here's our spotlight. Gordie Richardson had a pro career that stretched 10 seasons, with only a brief stint at the major league level, but he made the most of his time in the show. Given the stage in 1964, he would play a critical role in the Cardinals winning the pennant that year. Sources for this spotlight are saber.org, Wikipedia, and baseballreference.com. Gordon Clark Richardson was born on July 19, 1939, in Colquitt, Georgia, a small farming town that, even as of the 2020 census, only had 2,001 people. He would grow up to be a solid 6 feet tall, 185-pound left-handed pitcher. He said his three biggest passions helped shape his baseball career: his family, his farm, and his dream of being an MLB pitcher. He wasn't blessed with an overpowering fastball, so instead he used control with good breaking balls and a top-flight changeup. He said he had to hit his spots or he would be in trouble in short order. As Gordie said, baseball is a cat-and-mouse game. You have to outsmart the hitter. Gordie started pitching because his father managed a cow pasture team in a Sunday league, and he was the only lefty around. In high school, he played baseball, basketball, and football, as well as American Legion baseball. The Braves, White Sox, and Cardinals all showed an interest in his arm, albeit a small interest. The Cards signed him, as Gordie jokingly recalled, for a no-signing bonus. Instead, they offered me a pat on the back and "you can do it, kid" pep talk, says Gordie. The 18-year-old Gordie was assigned to the short-season Wytheville, Virginia Class D team in the Appalachian League in 1957. He would then be assigned to the Albany, Georgia team in the Georgia-Florida League. In 1958, he started with the Albany team and showed significant progress. One of his teammates was a 17-year-old Mike Shannon, who would be a teammate on the 1964 Cards. By August, he was promoted to the Houston Buffaloes of the AA Texas League. After 2 games, he developed back trouble and spent the rest of the season on the DL, now called the IL. He would play for the Cardinals team in the Florida West Coast Instructional League in the offseason. 1959 would see him pitching for the Winston-Salem in the Class B League. On January 16th, 1960, he would marry Patsy Kimbrell. From 1960 through 1963, Gordie was promoted and then stuck in Tulsa of the AA Texas League. He would see steady improvement, and in 1962 was named the Texas League's Pitcher of the Year, being named to the League All-Star Team as well as the AA All-Star Team. In 1963, he was drafted by the Angels under the Rule 5 draft, spent spring training mostly doing nothing. He threw all of 6 innings and was about to be sent down to the minors when the Cardinals exercised their right to buy him back. While disappointed at not playing at the major league level, he had a solid year with Tulsa. In 1964, that would see him promoted to AAA and assigned to the Jacksonville Suns of the International League. Gordie was having a career year as he appeared in 21 games, 9 of them starts, and had a record of 9-3 with an ERA of 1.55, a whip of 1.089, and a save. He was motivated to make it to the big leagues as he had set a deadline of retiring to his farm if he didn't make it to the majors in the season he turned 25, and 1964 was that season. His hard work and dedication finally paid off as he would get that call up from the Cards, being reunited with his teammate from Albany, Mike Shannon. He credited his manager in the Suns, Harry Walker, who was Yoda before Yoda. Gordie recalled, "I learned a lot from Harry Walker. Either you do or you don't. You give it your best shot." His best shot propelled him to his first game with the Cards as a starting pitcher, July 26th against the Phillies at Philadelphia. When he arrived in St. Louis, manager Johnny Keane said, "We're counting on Richardson as a starter right now. He'll start in 1 game of Sunday's doubleheader." Gordie took the hill in the first game. The Cards were 9 games back of the league-leading Phillies and in 6th place with a record of 48-48. Gordie had a rough start in the game. He walked Tony Gonzalez, the leadoff batter, and when the count went to 2-0 on the next batter, Cookie Rojas, Boyer went to the mound and simply said, "Calm down." Gordie would calm down, enough to log a complete game, scattering 5 hits and 3 walks while striking out 5 for a 6-1 triumph, and the Cards would stay above 500 for the rest of the season. The Phillies weren't impressed, as their manager Gene Mock said, "I had to see that kid beat us to believe it." Johnny Callison said, "Ugh, he didn't throw hard at all, and his curve wasn't much." This wouldn't be the last time Richardson bewildered the Phillies. Richardson, on the other hand, was overjoyed. "It's a dream come true," he recounted. "The 7 years in the minors was pretty distressing at times, but it was all worth the heartaches and troubles in moving the family around." He would also give credit to the defense, saying, "The fielding helped too. You don't have defense like this behind you in the minor leagues." He would take a beating in his next start against the Reds on July 31st. On August 5th, he would bounce back and go 5 innings in a win over the Cubs. His next 2 appearances would be in relief, and he would throw a perfect 8th inning for the hold against the Giants, with Barney Schultz getting the save. On September 4th, he again battled the North Side Chicago team. He came in at the top of the 9th of a tie game with men on first and second and only 1 out, and induced Ellis Burton to hit into an inning-ending double play. Ken Boyer would give Gordie a win when he hit a 3-run walk-off homer in the bottom half of the frame. On September 9th, with the score tied at 5 against the Phillies in the bottom of the 9th inning, Gordie pitched a perfect inning to send the game into extra innings, where in the 11th, the Cardinals would score 5 runs to win the game 10-5. Once again, Richardson bedeviled the Phillies and helped the Cardinals pull to within 5 games of first place. After a couple of more relief appearances, on the 20th, he started against the Reds but got roughed up by them again, but would bounce back on the 25th with a good outing versus the Pirates and pick up the win in his last start of the season. This helped the Cards, who were now in 3rd place, to climb just 2.5 games back of the Phillies, but sandwiched between the Reds and the Giants, with the Reds in 2nd place and the Giants only 1 game back of the Redbirds. A dramatic finish to the season was unfolding. Cards and Reds had 3 games left. Phillies had 2 games left. The Giants had 4 games left. The Phillies had 2 games left versus the Reds. The Reds had to finish their 3-game series versus the Pirates, having lost the first 2 games of the series, and then 2 more games against the Phillies. The Giants had 1 game left versus Houston and a 3-game series versus the Cubs. It was possible for all 4 teams to finish at 92-70. On September 30th, Gordie once again befuddled the Phillies as he would enter the game in the top of the 9th with 1 out and a runner on first. Clay Dalrymple had just hit a 2-run single to clip the Cardinals' lead to only 3 runs. Gordie would end the Phillies' rally as he would coax a flyout and a groundout to pick up his only Major League save for that season. The win would put the Cards in sole possession of first place at that point, a position they would not surrender. Richardson's long journey to the Major League level culminated in becoming a Phillies killer, boosting the Cardinals atop the National League standings. However, the Yankees were very rude to Gordie in the World Series, as he would appear in just 2 of the games, for 1/3 of an inning in each, and give up 2 hits and 2 walks. Joe Pepitone crushed a grand slam off of Gordie in Game 2, but only 1 run would be charged to Richardson as he inherited the bases loaded. His 3/4 share of the World Series player pool money had been earned with his regular season heroics. All in all, he had a fine half season in the majors as he appeared in 19 games, 6 of them starts, went 4-2 with a complete game and a save. His ERA was 2.30, and his whip was 1.170. More importantly, 3 of those starts and 4 of his relief appearances were critical in the Cards winning the pennant, with 1 of those starts and 2 of those relief appearances sticking it to the Phillies. After collecting his World Series ring, Gordie was going to pitch winter ball in the Dominican League, but his wife was expecting their 2nd child in December, and the doctor advised he stay. The Cards would end up trading him to the Mets. The Mets had acquired Warren Spahn in the offseason, and Richardson's chances of being a starter went pretty much down the drain. He would be sent to Buffalo at AAA after injuring his leg in spring training. His season in Buffalo started poorly as he couldn't find his control and failed to hit his spots as a starter. He was moved strictly to a reliever, and he flourished with a 1.17 ERA in his last 20 relief appearances before being called up to the Mets strictly as a reliever. He made 35 appearances and picked up 2 saves. His ERA was an unimpressive 3.78, but some of that was due bad luck as his whip was a respectable 1.089. He had been called up on July 9th and would make 35 appearances for 52 and one-third innings. He showed some great endurance, and from July 25th to August 1st, he made 6 appearances over those 8 days. He threw for 9 and one-third innings, giving up just 3 hits, 5 walks, and only 1 run while striking out 8, and he did get a save in that stretch. 1966 seemed to be the year he would turn the corner. He had a strong spring training, and for the first time in his pro career, he went with the parent club up north. When asked by a reporter how it felt going north with the team, he said, "I don't know. I've never gone north before." Unfortunately, things went south for him. He made 15 appearances. That left him with an ERA of 9.16. He was sent down to Jacksonville, by then a Mets AAA affiliate, and was solid there. Despite his strong showing, he decided to retire at the end of the season as his oldest child was going to be starting school, and he didn't want the itinerant life of a ball player for her. While he played ball, he had been renting out the 750-acre family farm, which grew soybeans, peanuts, and cotton, but he now needed to be there full-time. His post-baseball farming life was very good and successful for him. Gordon and his wife Patsy were able to build a new home in 1968, adding a swimming pool, tennis courts, and an indoor garden. They even had a small pond. A meat packing business would be added to the family business as well. Looking back, Gordon said, "I don't regret playing, and I don't regret quitting. I enjoyed it and got to see a lot of places a country boy wouldn't have been able to." Gordie, while your time with the Cardinals and the majors was relatively brief, you packed a lot into it and were a key piece to the team's success that season. You persevered and saw your dream come true. Your heroics of 1964, like so many other moments of that storied season, shine brightly upon Cardinal Nation. As we talked about before the spotlight, John, Gordie didn't have a tremendous fastball. He looked like it was somebody he should be able to be hit. And the spotlight said, Gene Mock, the manager, said, "I had to see that kid beat us to believe it." And one of the Philly players says, Johnny Callison says, "He didn't throw hard at all, and his curve wasn't much." He was a Philly killer, though.
I would say almost like a Philly Flayer or maybe Philly Flayer.
That's a good way of putting it, too. But he was just a kid, 25 years of age, who spent the last 7 years languishing in the minors, making basically his MLB debut in the last half of a critical season-ending pennant chase among 4 teams, but he shut them down multiple times. I'm still thinking there's some Philly players from that team who wake up in the middle of the night saying, "Oh, Gordie Richardson!"
It reminds me of like who was it? I could see like some Philly player from that time. They would see Gordie Richardson in a restaurant and goes, "There's the man. That man gave me the worst time of my life. Not my baseball career, my life."
Oh, Lord, indeed.
And they say he wasn't much, but he was pretty impressive. 3 times he faced the Phillies.
Indeed. Well, we're glad he was there.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, of all those times, think about it. If he failed any one of those games, the Cardinals would have been tied for second, and Phillies would have been in the World Series.
Absolutely.
And so I think just they underestimated him, and he kept coming back to haunt them.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Yeah.
And he may be haunting him in their dreams, like you said.
I had to see that kid beat us to believe it.
That's the thing, you don't know, and it's sort of funny in a way too, that how his career in a lot of ways it was similar to Barney Schultz, and those two were teammates for 5 days during the whole '64 season, both the minors and the majors. That's only because Gordie got called up 5 days before Barney did, but they both were having a career year in the minors. They get to the majors. They did really well in the majors as well. They both languished in the minors for a number of years.
Right.
As well. And Gordie was stuck at Double-A Tulsa for 4 straight years. I mean, most people would have been giving up because it's like, I'm not getting promoted.
Yeah, yeah.
And then he finally did, and then he got right back. He got right up into the the majors.
Yep.
And that's and
so a couple.
Unfortunately, the Yankees were very rude to him as well in the in the World Series. But
but he got him there.
The fact that his regular season is what got us there.
Yep.
And without it, we wouldn't have won the World Series.
So he had a great season there with the Cardinals. He eventually does end up getting traded away to another team, and he eventually, in a couple of years after that, he went to spring training and he made the major league club for the first time ever in spring season. So he went north with them. That had to have been a huge confidence builder for him. He struggles a little bit with that parent club, is sent down to AAA, does perform well there, and would only be 28 years old the next year, with every reason to believe that he could be back in the majors, but he retires. He puts family first, and he walks away, and that's a little bit of a head-scratcher for him. He's like, well, you're only 28. But wow, he just says, no, that's enough. I'm gonna go home and take care of my family. I got peanuts to grow.
Right, and he just didn't want to keep moving around anymore. He didn't want to do that to his wife and kids.
Right.
I was saying he seemed to do pretty well. I mean, his farm was successful. The business grew, and he added other lines of business. And crying out loud, he builds a swimming pool and a tennis court. I'd say he did pretty well for himself.
That he did. Yeah. He said he walked away with no regrets. It was like he said, "Yeah, that was a cool experience. I'm glad I had the opportunity. Now I got other responsibilities." Wow.
Yeah. Oh, just before I forget, because Colquitt, which, like we said, is a town of like 2,000 people. It's more of a farming community.
His hometown.
Yeah. And so where I work, this couple came in from near a town called, it's spelled like Cairo in Egypt, but they pronounce it Cairo. And I looked it up. I go, oh, you're like only 50 miles from Colquitt. And they looked at me like, how do you know that?
A town of 2,000. So, yeah.
A town of 2,000 of all things, right?
That is
so nobody's even heard of our town, and we're like 10 times the size. No, I told him, well, I'm a devout Cardinals fan, and one of the heroes of the 64 team is from that town. That's why I know.
Great. Fantastic. Yeah.
It's just, you never know.
Well, now we all know.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it was like, I really had fun doing this article too. It was fascinating. Just this guy kept plugging away year after year, and he set his goal, and his timetable came up. He says, I got to make it by the time I'm 28, and he did.
Good for him. Well,
25, however long it was, however old he was, he set that goal, and he accomplished it, and he got a ring.
Well, he had a mindset to achieve his goals, and that apparently shows through in his farming work also, as the successful life he led after baseball would demonstrate.
Oh, definitely. He's still around, and as far as I can tell, he's as happy as can be, and that's the best thing you can have.
And we're going to try and verify that. We're going to try and plug away and meet one of our goals, and that is to interview one of these 64 players, because as Gordie is still alive, we'd love to get him on here. We're going to keep working at it, because he'd be able to give us insights to the 4 players that we've already put spotlights on.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to hear him talk about players, especially like Barney Schultz, who he spent almost the entire year with in the minors and the majors.
Right, indeed.
And he as frustrated as he must have been, he was looking at some guy who's like 12, 13 years older than him, who had been in the majors, is now back in the minors, but still plugging away. And I wonder if Barney gave him like encouragement, saying, "Hey, kid, you don't know. You just don't know what's going to happen."
Well, let's keep plugging away, and maybe we'll find out. Let's go back and talk about a Cardinal player who has recently passed, and that's Orlando Cepeda. He did play at the Cardinals for 3 years, as I recall.
Yes, it was 3 years. Oh, and what 3 years he gave us, too.
67, 68, 69, correct?
I think, let me check. double check that real fast here. And I believe, actually, I thought, was it 68 or was it 60? No, it was 66 through 68. That's what it was.
Oh, all right. So he was involved with 2 World Series in 67 and 68.
Right. And he got the MVP for 67.
Right. So obviously he was quite the celebrated player and an important role in getting that particular pennant or in World Series.
Yeah. I mean, it was not just his play on the field, which was magnificent, especially at the plate that season, but also just his presence in the locker room. He would always play his like Latin Caribbean music all the time, and on his, he had his own record turntable there, and keep everybody loose and upbeat. He was called Cha-Cha for a reason.
And of course, some of his most celebrated accomplishments came with other teams, notably the San Francisco Giants.
Oh yes, he was. Oh gosh, with him and McCovey and Mays. Oh my gosh. I mean, that's just like what a killer lineup that must have been to face.
Indeed.
Yeah. In fact, I think it was in '61 he led the league in home runs.
I think
with the Giants.
I think him, Albert Pujols, and I want to say Carl Hubble. And again, this is coming from just something I read yesterday, were the only players to be unanimously voted as Rookie of the Year and unanimously voted for MVP when each of them won those.
I think you're right. I think so. Yeah, that's right. So, he was Rookie. I forgot about he was Rookie of the Year. That's right.
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good company to be in.
Oh, definitely. He was a multi-time All-Star, and he's the one who came up, the term called the Cardinals Albertos.
Awesome.
And he would say "Viva Albertos," so he was like, he was like one of those great players you just couldn't help but like.
Yeah. Well, wish he could still be around, and we tip our hat to him also, and hope that Orlando is resting in peace.
Hope so. He seemed to be, from everything I read, he was a happy, content person. Good. And he got in the Hall of Fame, so.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, 11-time All-Star, MVP, World Series champ, Rookie of the Year, Hall of Fame. Yeah. I'd say he did it all.
Well, we're grateful for the 3 years that he devoted to the St. Louis Cardinals.
Oh, yes, especially that 67 season. He was the prime move on the off of the bat.
And we'll be doing what with our next episode, John? Are we going to take a look at the 1964 team as how it was put together?
Yeah, we'll do that next. And then I think I'm trying to move us forward in time to like the 1982 season.
Okay.
Which really was, we had some great players, but there was a lot of role players we had on that team too that deserve, mentioning as well.
You betcha. So we'll be taking, that's what we're looking forward to, wrapping up our focus on the 64 season by looking at how the team was put together. It's very fascinating reading for my part. I'm excited to be sharing that with our listeners in that next episode.
Oh yes, I am too. That was a fun article to write too. Was that about how the 64 team was put together? One piece here, one piece there. Being divine, being very patient, getting all the pieces together, the right coaching and manager and all that, and it paid off.
It's a fascinating piece of winning baseball, not just what you do on the field, but what you're doing off of it to get all the pieces together so that they can perform well on the field.
Exactly.
And we'll be doing that in just a couple of weeks.
Okay, great, Tom. And have a happy 4th of July and celebrate today, too. Have a beer for Bobby Bonilla. even though he's the one who should be paying the tab.
There you go. All right, John, we'll be talking to you soon.
All right. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of St. Louis Cardinals Beyond the HOF, saluting unsung heroes. Please share this podcast with others and subscribe so that you are alerted when episodes are published. Our episodes will be published bi-weekly on the 2nd and 4th Monday of each month. Leave a review when possible. We welcome your feedback by email about how we're doing and what bench jockeys you'd like to see featured. Our email address is TommyJohnSTLCardinalsPodcast@gmail.com. It's all lowercase, Tommy, Tommy, John, JONSTL, Cardinals podcast @gmail.com. Go Cards!